Good morning, wanderers and adventurers. I hope you guys slept well. I am excited because finally today, school is over. One of my primary tools is Unreal Engine 5. And when I first started using Unreal Engine 5, I started off with version 5.0. Wouldn't you know that the current version of Unreal Engine is version 5.3, which basically just means that there was a boatload of stuff that I needed to learn and figure out how to use. So I spent about 2 weeks going through tutorial hell in order to learn how to make something new and cool, and boy howdy, do I think we have something along those lines. So with all of that said and done, let me show you what I've started working on. Let's start with a mechanic that I don't like: respawn timers. To me, it seems like just bad, plain and simple, archaic design that in any online multiplayer game, if you die for any reason, that you have to wait, in some games, multiple minutes before you get to play again. That's just, why would you do that? I think it would be wise to take a lesson out of an old schoolyard game, and that game is Trenchball. Trenchball is an evolution of the old game Dodgeball. Basically, it works like this. You have a central zone, which is kind of a free area for players. The only rule is that you can't throw balls from that area. Then, on either side of the free area, you have a team. We're going to call this red team and blue team for the sake of an example. The rules of Dodgeball are pretty straightforward. Basically, you're throwing balls around at the other team in an effort to hit them. If you get hit, you're out, but if you manage to catch the ball, the person who threw the ball at you gets out instead. Basically, the idea is that you throw balls around and you try to avoid them. However, Dodgeball, just like these games that I feel are doing it all wrong, has the idea of out. Getting hit by the ball means you don't get to play until the next game begins. Trenchball is clever. On either side of each team's zone is another zone belonging to the opposing team. The basic idea of Trenchball is that whenever you are hit, instead of going out and leaving the game entirely, you go to the zone on the opposite side of your opponents and, for the most part, continue playing as normal. What makes this so cool is that instead of upsetting the balance for the remaining players and losing the ability to play, it's through your continued play that you actually make the game more dynamic and more interesting. So then, here's the idea. What if we have some sort of team-based objective thing that you're trying to do over here, and that objective can be interacted with by the players? The players are, for the most part, considered alive, and the deal is that when you die, instead of being removed from the game temporarily, you turn into, perhaps, a ghost. And ghosts then can't interact with the objective specifically, but they can continue interacting with each other and other players. And that's the idea. Make a cute little online multiplayer game where if you lose, you get to keep playing. Anyway, the process. So first thing was the tilt shift effect. What is a tilt shift effect? Well, in photography, if you imagine a camera, you've got two parts. You've got first the sensor. This is the part of the camera that actually receives light and then burns that into an image. And then you have the lens. This is the part that lets you zoom, change the focal distance, and all sorts of stuff like that. And in most cameras, in most situations, these two things exist perfectly parallel to each other. But with a tilt shift lens, what you have is a lens that, first of all, you can shift, so you can actually change its position there, and then you can, of course, tilt it. So you actually, instead of being parallel, you can tilt it and move it in various angles like that. And what that's really useful for is creating a sort of miniaturized effect for your photos. I thought that if you were to have a cute little game about murdering each other, then this would be an excellent way to make it cute. Feeding into that aesthetic, I made some bits and bobs, and this is a still of what the game might look like. Obviously, there is a tremendous amount that needs to be figured out before this is anything that's particularly playable, but just based on this image alone, I think there's a lot of potential for something really fun here. Next, on the topic of things that I had to spend the 2 weeks learning how to do, one of them is the enhanced input system in Unreal Engine 5. There is no easy way to communicate how convoluted input used to be. Basically, all Unreal Engine could determine was if a button was pushed, when, and the current state of that button. So that works great if you're trying to recreate maybe like classic Mario. All you gotta do is move left and right and jump. easy. I love it. But the moment you want to start creating something like Devil May Cry or Street Fighter or one of these much, much more complex input systems, everything just becomes a nightmare. Luckily, Unreal Engine 5 has something called the Enhanced Input System, and it is fantastic. It is so fantastic that I've already made a combo system for all of the characters, and basically just, I don't know, programming character input is a breeze. It's very easy now to make extremely complex things in the matter of a day, as opposed to like sometimes weeks previously. The other thing that took a bit of learning is Nanite. Real quick summary for those of you who don't know what Nanite is in Unreal Engine 5 and why it's a really cool big deal. The wizards who make Unreal Engine noticed something very peculiar one day. They said, okay, we've got a tree, and then that tree is made up of 10 million polygons. But if you get really, really far away from it, that tree only takes up 1 pixel on the screen, just one teeny tiny pixel, but we're still rendering all 10 million polygons. So then there was a guy in the back of the class who was like, that seems inefficient. If it's only taking up 1 pixel, why don't we just worry about rendering whatever that 1 pixel is? And so, Epic Games, again, that's the studio that makes Unreal Engine, hired a group of wizards to program a system so that essentially the output of a scene, no matter how complex it is, only cares about the pixels on your screen. And for whatever reason that is far more complicated than I could ever understand, that means it's a lot easier to do stuff. More specifically, it means that we can make extremely complex models and they'll still render just as fast as very, very simplified ones. Now, way back in version 5.0 of Unreal Engine, this was a very limited feature and only applied to a few things, but now it applies to many things, including foliage, trees, things of that nature, and displacement. There's like a laundry list of features that I could talk about and try to fully explain, but the point that you need to understand is just that stuff can be real pretty now. And what I've been doing with Nanite in order to try and make this game is playing around with the idea of fully modeled foliage. And if you are a developer and that sets off a crap load of red flags, trust me, I hear you, hear me out. For a lot of things like flora and just general decoration for your scene or your world, the way you used to do things previously is you would take like a flat texture of like, say you wanted a weed or something like that, flat plane, slap a texture on top of it, bam, you're done. Like 2 triangles maximum. But, and I've been experimenting with it, so this isn't necessarily final, but if I take, instead of just 2 triangles, a few more, maybe like 12, and fully model a thing, model being a very loose term here, I can essentially eliminate all degrees of translucency and really cut down on things like overdraw and still have it be just as performant. So we're playing with it at best, but when it works, it's looking really cool and really nice. Displacement also exists, which is super cool. It's a little buggy at the moment, and it's not fully implemented, but hopefully that'll be a thing soon. There's also... I can hear myself getting distracted. The important thing is that I am out of learning mode and I am ready to enter back into creative mode. This has been sort of a sneak peek at the first thing that I've started working on, but that means I also get to start committing more time to other things I've been intending to upload as well as the Discord and Patreon, which is a good segue into closing out this video. If you want to join the conversation or buy me a sandwich for some reason, links to Discord and Patreon are below. Of course, so is the subscribe and like button if you haven't already. It does, of course, help out. That said, adventurers and wanderers, I wish you all a good night and I hope you get some rest, because I'll see you guys in the morning.